Now I know what you're thinking. Has the schizophrenia finally caught up with him? Does he think there's like chemicals in the blood that control how resistant you are to the virus? Relax, we all know that doesn't exist. Now you're probably familiar with the idea of nanomachines, if not from like science from at least science fiction movies. Actually, let's be honest, it's probably science fiction movies. In a word, in that context of sci-fi, they're usually like very small machines that act with some sort of, if not swarm intelligence, at least like a unified purpose. And if you know about that, you're probably also familiar with the von Neumann style self-replicating nanomachines, because those are usually more of a threat in science fiction films. They lend themselves more to that. You know, like the gray clouds that consume everything they touch and like become more of themselves and eventually destroy everything. So the basic idea of a von Neumann probe is essentially that you take like a packet, maybe a football-sized packet of these molecular level machines, send them out to another star system. There they get into some kind of planet or orbital body and consume the resources of that body to make more of themselves, and then they do that over and over until they have the whole star system, and they send packets like this out to all the other star systems, and then eventually everything's grey goo. Now, what science fiction usually leaves out is the details of how they actually do this, because again, what you see is just these swarms of grey goo that consume all and make more of themselves, but that isn't really how the idea of it is supposed to work. What they really do is they rearrange themselves into bigger, more complex machines. And to that end, even the nanites themselves change significantly. Designing all that, of course, would cost a lot of money, and let's be honest, the Grey Goo Swarm is simply a lot scarier and more interesting as a sci-fi plot device than just like a planet that's full of factories and robots, which is what would happen. But the representation of nanomachines is flawed in media, often down to the literal molecular level, where they're often presented as like these little grey balls. Sometimes they have glowy bits on them. Let me show you a real nanomachine, right? This baby right here is called 2.3.1.48, and what it can do is activate or deactivate certain genes by very cleverly rearranging the way that your DNA is spooled up. It's a machine that does basically one very rather simple task, really, when you think about it, on a molecular scale in an almost mechanical fashion. And when you have these self-replicating nanomachines that create these complicated processes of manufacturing and mining and all that, they would also create a lot of specialized individual classes of nanomachine, because frankly, there's no point using a 500 euro Swiss Army knife when you could just use a screwdriver. So the whole thing of like every one of the nanites can just do anything, also not really how it works. Many of the things that the nanomachines build to achieve their purpose aren't even going to be made out of nanomachines. If you have like a concrete wall, you don't need it to be made out of nanomachines. It can just be concrete. And these von Neumann machines will come with specific blueprints and like instructions that they're supposed to carry out. But eventually, because you know that you can't really, every plan falls apart upon contact with the enemy. So eventually what they will do is build their own thinking machines that can carry out more complex reasoning tasks than these small nanites can actually do, in order to overcome the unique challenges that this particular swarm of nanites is faced with. Which begs the question, given how, like, probably useless they're going to be, is the pre-programmed instructions bit of the von Neumann probe really necessary? Let's be honest, in a complex process that has a lot of steps, there's going to be errors, especially if it's done on such a huge scale. Just the process of sending out the initial football of nanomachines into the great void beyond, some of those are going to get altered by cosmic radiation or other molecular interactions, because, you know, being nanomachines, they are rather resistant to many of the stresses that we're not resistant to, but on the other hand, they're vulnerable to a lot of the stresses that we don't really care about. And even if you do have self-correcting capacities, something will inevitably go wrong with those also. Just the sheer amount of processes and repetitions and alterations that are going on at any given time, because you want these to adapt to a certain extent, it's impossible mathematically. Entropy is a thing and it will mess up your plans. So really, the simpler the package you send as the original nanomachines, the less of a risk it will have to be massively damaged and lead to like complex chain reactions in ways that you really do not want to happen. If you have a lot of time on your hands and you don't really care about the very specifics of what the nanomachines do, you can just send nanomachines where all that they do is self-replicate. They don't have any blueprints for factories and robots, nothing. It's just these little machines, and all they can do is self-replicate. They will, however, also change and adapt when faced with new circumstances, increase their diversity, develop new variants and metastructures of themselves. Because the thing is, you don't need to send instructions to make clear that you want that to happen. You can just send these very simple nanomachines and they will figure out on their own how to best replicate themselves and how to alter themselves in ways that will be advantageous to that. Because the universe itself comes equipped with the computer, with the differential engine that will do all of the heavy lifting in terms of R&D and development for you with these specific nanites. Through an endless process of trial and error, it will get rid of all of the projects that fail at doing what they are supposed to do, which is, self-replicate, and it will always find new and better ways to adapt to whatever circumstances this particular kind of nanite is inserted into. That's right, you can just use evolution to guide the progress of your nanomachines. And chances are, eventually, they will start building supercomputers capable of complex reasoning and informed decision-making, because it's a very successful strategy for further multiplication of the self. In fact, that ability will so vastly expand the abilities of the swarm that it's like hitting all of the jackpots, evolutionarily speaking. Now you might be thinking, Burger, how could a nanite screwdriver ever build a complex AI? We can't even build a complex AI. Well, we're getting close, but that's not even where you should be looking. Remember 2.3.1.48? Nobody actually calls the thing a nanomachine. They actually call it an enzyme, and nobody designed it, it just sort of occurs in, I think, all living things naturally. Because really, let's be honest, all enzymes are is nanomachines of seemingly great complexity that are comparatively simple when compared to some of the others that exist, and the interplay of all of those endless types of different enzymatic nanomachines and proteins that exist and the structures that they build construct everything that we know on the entire planet. You see, the AI that the nanomachines were eventually supposed to build has already been built. It's us, humans. We're the AI. Like all living things on Earth, we are composed of a huge swarm of incredibly diverse nanomachines that create highly complex structures, the interplay of which creates us. And, most of our body is nanomachines. Not all of it is. There's also a lot of base minerals that are just there to provide structure, although they tend to be interspersed with various nanomachines once again, or rather, meta processes of nanomachines. If all you want is for your nanomachines to just rearrange themselves and develop themselves in an ever more complex and diverse fashion, you don't need to put in any instructions for that to happen, increasing the complexity of the thing that you are sending originally vastly and increasing the risk that something will go horribly wrong. You can just piggyback off of evolution, and eventually evolution, in exchange for time, will do all of that for you. Think of it it this way, right? If you want to, like, drop something off a skyscraper, a brick, maybe. I don't know why you would want to do that, but say you would want to do that. You could go to the effort of designing and building a set of thrusters, fueling those up so it can shoot down faster. Or you could just drop it. Because let's be honest, the trial and error mechanisms of evolution are also how we fundamentally develop many of our technologies. Like evolution, a lot of the time we try something, we fuck it up, and it turns out that's not how it works. We have formalized processes for using this kind of thing to gain knowledge about the real world. And because we are capable of reason, we are excellent at extrapolating from the data we have whether or not something is likely to fail or succeed. Very often we don't need the process of experimentation, we can skip a whole lot of that. When it comes to developing AI currently to automate processes we'd like to automate, or just expand our capabilities to create minds that are good at things that we're not particularly good at, we also use evolutionary principles. That's literally how it works. You have a program that just sort of generates mostly junk code. That junk code is then tested by another program to see if it does what it's supposed to do, and those iterations of that program that do that best are then fed back while all the other ones get yeeted, and the process begins anew until eventually we have a program, an algorithm that can do what we want it to do by process of evolution. All because evolution, if provided with enough time, will eventually arrive at developing an AI that can create these kinds of other AIs. Now, don't misunderstand here. I don't believe that evolution exists to make us us. That would be putting the cart before the horse. I also don't think that somebody sent the base molecules of life through the stars in order to seed us. I mean, it's a possibility, but let's be honest, there are dozens of equally viable and likely theories for how life originated on Earth. I just like the idea of panspermia because it's cool. My point is this: human beings, and really all life that we know of in the universe, which, to be fair, is only Earth, is made of nanomachines. And if we're really fully honest with ourselves, the difference between natural nanomachines and man-made nanomachines is semantical at best. The ones developed by nature tend to be a lot more complex and sophisticated, but that's about it. While at the same time, they're less complex and less sophisticated in other areas because they have a very unique selective pressure, which we are capable of breaking to make the selective pressure go into other directions. There is certainly a difference between humans and machines, but I think that difference is more the difference between humans and trees. It's there, but it's also not so utterly alien that we cannot relate to it. I think that with this mode of thinking, the line between people and technology is a lot blurrier than many of us would assume it is. There's entire landscapes we think of as natural that actually would not exist without human interference for many, many years, and if you think about the kinds of fruits and vegetables we eat, all of those cultivars is basically just us always selecting those batches of nanomachines that did the things we wanted them to do. Once again, using the process of evolution to grow bigger crops, healthier crops, more resistant crops. We are swarms of nanomachines that have developed sapiens, and it didn't happen as an elegant, pre-planned process of going to a particular point. It happened as the result of a long series of trials and errors. And currently, and also for the past century or so, we have been opening a lot of new chapters in that process. Technology is not this flawless process that you design and it works the way that you want it to work. It's a very complex, it's really a mess, if you think about it, of divergent programming and competing interests. A wonderful mess, capable of creating the most amazing things. But it's not the sterile process that is separated from nature the way that we think it is. It's really just as organic as we are. And that, I think, is a wonderful thought. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. Did not nail that one, I don't care. This is not my short story collection. I am not, in fact, H.P. Lovecraft. And in that spirit, think about it. Think about how you're much more interconnected to everything else than you really thought you were. The trees outside, they have the same origin as you, and in a way, if you think about it, it's a technological origin. And see you around, cunts.